Hello everyone, this is Yoko. On this channel, I feel that information about what is happening in China is often not correctly conveyed to countries other than China, so I will be disseminating the information I have gathered in English. I'm getting information from multiple media, so I'd be happy if you could comment on the content of the video. Also, my native language is not English, so I use an AI speaker to create the voice to convey the information correctly. If you like it, please subscribe to the channel and support us. First, let me talk about China's declining birth rate and aging population. As the proportion of elderly people in China continues to increase, it will become a society that requires money to support the increasing number of elderly people. And the wealth that China creates will decrease, so I uploaded a video before that it will enter a decline period in the future. Does spending money to support the elderly reduce the wealth they create? Aren't services for the elderly an added value? Let's think in a hypothetical country to think about whether there is added value to services for the elderly. Suppose there is a country A, and there are 100 citizens there. And let's say that the citizens of country A create goods and services, and generate wealth of $10,000 per citizen every year. Then, country A generates wealth of $1 million a year. However, one year suddenly half of the people decided to retire. Half the population does not work. How much wealth can country A generate as a whole when it comes to living comfortably in the future? The number of workers is halved. The value that the country as a whole can create is halved. However, services unique to the elderly will be required, and that will be in the fields of medical care and nursing care. Even though they are elderly, they eat and travel normally, so it does not mean that their consumption patterns will change when they become elderly. For example, when a person becomes seriously ill or needs nursing care, services for the elderly become necessary. Demand for new services does not suddenly increase just because we are elderly. For example, there will be increased demand in the fields of medical care and nursing care, so if we provide services in those fields, I think that new value will be created. Until now, I was working on an hourly wage, but even if I moved to the field of nursing care, the total increase would not be that much. So if we look at the country as a whole, more people will retire and less wealth will be created. As for how to solve this problem, one way is to invite people from other countries and have them work in country A. One idea is to maintain the wealth that the whole country creates by increasing the number of people. However, this is only a temporary solution. People who come from outside will become elderly people in the future if they stay in country A forever. Since they will retire someday, the working population will decrease and the number of elderly people will increase, so we need money to support more elderly people. Where do the pensions come from? Those who are currently working pay insurance premiums and are returned to the elderly. This is called the addition method. Many people are unaware of this method. Some people think that they are pooling the pension they paid and that they will receive it in the future, but that is not the case. People who are currently working pay the money and the elderly receive it as pensions. In that case, there is no choice but to maintain it by reducing the pension, increasing the money to be collected, or combining them. Even if immigrants are introduced, the same problem will occur again in the future when those people receive pensions as elderly people. How can we solve this problem fundamentally? If half of the people in country A are retired and do not work, the situation will be the same as before if the remaining people are allowed to generate double the wealth per person. We call this increased productivity. We are at an important stage to decide whether to bring in immigrants and carry over the problem to the future, or to increase the wealth created by each person with the aim of improving productivity. By the way, if you look at it by sector, there is an idea that if the number of elderly people increases, services for the elderly will become necessary, which will create demand and create employment. It makes sense if you work in a field such as nursing care. Until now, I was working elsewhere, but if I quit there and go to nursing care, the question is who will do the work I have done so far, so the total wealth that I create will not change. The best thing is to increase productivity per person, but Japan is said to be poor at improving productivity. Originally, it would be better to introduce computers and machines and do the parts that can be automated, but Japanese people are tenacious, so the workload becomes heavy, and even if it is impossible to do it alone, I will do my best. Cheimasu. Japanese people tend to work beyond their personal limits, so it may actually be important not to overwork. Japan is a country that thinks about what to do so as not to be troubled in old age. Among the elderly, there is a phenomenon in which the elderly are divided into those who are in great trouble and those who are comfortable and relaxed. China is already showing signs of polarization. In China, the future depends on where you work when you are working. For example, people who work for civil servants or state-owned companies are privileged class. If you work in a place like this, it's very stable. And China has social insurance. It's a society where you can say that the disparity is fixed from the time you work for a company, including after retirement, because you can get a solid pension in the future. Until recently, China was doing well. Civil servants and employees of state-owned enterprises are very stable, even after retirement. As a civil servant, I don't have much freedom. However, in the private sector, there is a lot of freedom and a lot of opportunities. If you're a public employee, you can't do a side job, but if you're in the private sector, you can get on it as soon as you get a chance. Until a while ago, public servants were fine, but there was a way of thinking that the private sector had more opportunities. In Japan as well, public servants are now stable, and compared to the private sector, they are blessed and protected by law. Until a while ago in China, there was a notion that although there was no stability, the private sector had more chances. But now civil servants are popular. I don't have a job to begin with. And even if you work at a company, you may be worried that your salary may be reduced or you may be fired. It seems that the value of a stable position as a civil servant has been reconsidered, and the number of applicants has already increased significantly. But now, even the civil servants are unstable. China has a tobacco monopoly. Even in Japan, private companies cannot freely manufacture and sell cigarettes. There are monopoly bureaus all over China. However, when the monopoly bureau recruits personnel, it has become a hot topic by advertising that if there are relatives in the organization, they cannot be hired in related departments. There are two reasons why this is a hot topic. First, in China, it is prohibited to recruit relatives through fraudulent means. It is limited to civil servants and state-owned enterprises, but if left unchecked, fair and just recruitment will not be carried out, so it will be unfair because people with power in the organization will let their relatives and children join the company. The reason why it is advertised that it is not good to have such relatives join the company in an unfair manner is that in reality, it is rampant to let one's children, grandchildren, or relatives join the company in an unfair manner. So, it clearly shows that you will not dare to let your relatives join the company in an unfair way. In China, it is not uncommon for the sons of Communist Party executives to get jobs in government agencies in good positions from the beginning. So it's definitely not a bad story. Chinese people understand that, for example, if a relative says, "I'd like to ask my son," I think there are quite a few people who say, "Well, I'll put him in our company." If everyone starts to do that, when an attractive department with a small number of recruits, various people will say, "Get my son in," or "Get in my relatives," and things will get out of control. I think it's highly likely that the reason why you're saying that you won't let your relatives join the company in an illegal way anymore is because it's too troublesome, so you're pushing out a just cause. That's all for now. See you next time.